Callie right now is present at the Ann Arbor Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group. We're going to be going live with her presentation in just a moment. Just getting the stream started up so people can gather up and kind of watch the presentation as it comes together. Handouts out.
Okay, so go ahead and pass down your primary food handout too, if you could for me, please. Just pass those around. And again, you may have to share because I wasn't quite sure how many people would come because we weren't sure about the weather today. Right. So, all right. So my name is Callie Bradford. I'm actually a health coach as well, and I also host the PBN SG group in Warren, Michigan. I've been hosting that now since I think maybe November, but I also used to host one in Detroit because I own a juice bar called Go Smoothies, but now it's called just Go Press Juice. So we have our own line of fresh, raw, organic juices as well. And I've been health coaching now for probably 8 years. And you know, I absolutely love what I do. And I like to tell people a little bit about myself. So my health coaching certification comes from integrative nutrition. And I also used to be in pharmaceuticals for 20 years. So I have like both sides of the coin, a more holistic approach as well as a traditional Western medicine approach to healing. And what we've learned over time is that there's something called primary food, and then there's something called secondary food. So you would think that your food that you're eating right now, right? So we're consuming food, we're eating. We would think that that would be our primary food, right? You would think that because you need food that you're eating for nourishment to survive, correct?
Yeah.
Well, that is just the opposite.
Oh.
The food that we consume with our mouths are actually the secondary food. And here's the correlation. Make the primary food is maybe how you feel about yourself, how you relate to other people. If you are feeling, you know, you're having some emotional trauma or something like that, that is like your primary food. And actually, y'all, it drives what we put in our mouths, our secondary food.
Yeah.
So if there are some things that are missing in our lives that we either consciously understand that those things are missing or subconsciously understand that those things are missing, it really does play a role in what it is that we are eating. So anybody here heard of emotional eating?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, right?
Right.
So a lot of people don't like to admit that they're emotional eaters. How many people here would admit that they are emotional eaters? Yes? Yes, so I'm definitely an emotional eater. Yeah, most people are emotional eaters in some way, shape, or form. So let me give you a quick idea of an emotional eater. I don't know, you're upset with your spouse and you decide that, you know what, I'm upset with my spouse, and instead of telling them how I feel, I am going to go in the refrigerator and I'm going to eat the whole container of Haagen-Dazs. Right?
Yeah.
That's, or cookies, right? Or some cake or cupcakes or something like that, correct? So that's emotional eating. Or you say, I am upset at work and I'm not really feeling fulfilled with the work that I do. Say you are a computer scientist, but you really want to play the guitar, but you're not doing that. So instead of you going forth and doing your, playing your guitar, learning how to play guitar, or being a part of a band, what do? You eat, right? And then some people call that like you're stuffing your feelings instead of letting your feelings out. So that is what the difference is between primary and secondary food. So primary food is our emotions, how we're feeling, how we relate to others, and we'll get into the actual wheels here too, because I'm going to give you guys a snippet because I'm not sure about how much time we have, but you can certainly always reach out to me after the meeting as well to find out more about it. So then our secondary food is what we consume. And our secondary food obviously is our nourishment that keeps us healthy, but we got to work on the first part of it, which is the primary part of it, right? We got to work on the primary part of it. So an example for me was several years ago, I was suffering from, fibroid tumors, lack of energy. I had a lot of female issues, And I just couldn't understand why that was happening. So by the time I was 30, I literally had 5 surgeries, literally, by the time I was 30 years old. And I'm like, I've had enough of this. This is crazy. I don't want to be operated on another time. I cannot do this anymore. So everything that I read was all about food. It was all about food and the nourishment, which is why we're probably all a part of this plant-based nutrition support group, right? Yeah. So everything that we know about food, about life and vitality and health actually comes from food. But then I also had to do a self-assessment on myself about why I was making the choices that I was making. And it was because I wasn't necessarily happy in where I was in life, although I was making tons of money and what people would say on the outside, living the life of my dreams, or their dreams, or somebody else's dreams. It wasn't necessarily the life that I wanted to live. So I had family members that tell me all the time, and again, this is related back to the primary food part of it, and I'll get to the wheel in a second, that would say, oh, you have to go out and make a lot of money. And they didn't really care about some of the things that I wanted to do. And then I also had a relative tell me once, well, you don't want to do anything to embarrass the family. How many of y'all heard that growing up? Like, don't do anything to embarrass the family. So you go through life feeling like you have to do these certain things to live up to the expectations of your family. And then you don't realize that trying to live up to the expectation of your family is really what's making you miserable, right? And so then you start to make food choices that aren't necessarily good for your body, because your body will actually speak to you and tell you things that you would never even realize. How many of y'all believe that? Your body tells you exactly what's happening, but sometimes you're just not in a position to hear about it. All right, so that just gives you an example from my perspective in terms of where I am. So if you look at your handout here, this is a lovely little handout that says nutrition is a secondary source of energy. Primary foods or non-food sources of nourishment are what really fuel us. So it may be physical activity. It could be your relationships, whether or not they are love relationships or agape relationships, so family relationships, your church relationships, whoever you are relating to in life, that is part of your primary food. Okay? And then the other part of it is your spirituality. Those are some of the examples that we're given here on our page. So we all have a spiritual side to us. We're all just human beings having spiritual beings having a human experience, basically. So we're not feeling like we're connected on a spiritual level. That could lead to us not making so many choices in terms of good choices in terms of what we're putting in our bodies. All right, so take a look at the wheel. And I want to borrow somebody's wheel just really quickly. Sorry. I'll give it right back, I promise. All right, so this is a circle of life. And when I'm normally with groups, we do an activity, what we call pair and share, where you would get together with somebody next to you, 2 people, and first you would look at your wheel, and then you would say to yourself, okay, where am I in terms of my spirituality? Am I happy where I am spiritually right now? And this is your own self-assessment. And the other thing that I tell people to do is when you look at your spirituality, put down what comes first to mind. So if you are completely happy and satisfied with where you are spiritually, you would put your dot right at the top of the circle. Okay, but if you're, say, middle of the road, you got some work to do, you feel like you're not quite where you want to be, maybe you would put your dot in the middle of the circle. And then if you say, you know what, my spirituality is just completely out of whack, I have no connectedness to my spiritual self, then you would probably put it closer to the center of the wheel. So you would basically go through this entire circle and do the same thing. So creativity affects our secondary food choices. So if you feel like you're letting your creative juices flow, because every one of us in this room have a creative side, whether or not you're an accountant or an engineer, there is something creative about you that you may not be letting out. I'll give you an example. I have a friend that is an engineer. He's also a former, he's a Navy veteran as well. He was a Navy commander on a ship and everything. But he also writes songs, which I would have never thought that in a million years. So that's part of his creative side, and he doesn't normally let a lot of people know, but that is an outlet for him. So if he just, stuck to, I'm a Navy veteran, I went to the Naval Academy, and he didn't let his creative side come out, then he may have said, creativity is something that I could, really improve on, right? All right, your career. So I have people that are not happy in their career when I talk to them, when I coach them, and the way I find that out is not only because they put their circle right, they put their little dot closer to the center of the wheel, but we may talk about, okay, what happens in the course of your day when you're at work? So how many of us go to the vending machine every day at 3 o'clock like clockwork to get some food, right? Maybe not making so many good choices. So some of it is habit, but another part of it is maybe we are just bored with work and we gotta have an outlet, so we go to the vending machine every day at 3 o'clock to get a Snicker bar, right? And then education. Do you feel like you are where you want to be education-wise? It doesn't matter what age you are. You could be, I think there was a lady that was 90-something years old who always had in her mind that she wanted to go and get her bachelor's degree, and this would have probably been an area for her where she would have not been happy. And then she finally decided when she was in her 90s that she would go and get her bachelor's degree. And then she was happy, all right? And then health. Where are you health-wise? So this is where a lot of people, have issues with the health part, right? A lot of people have, except for us in the plant-based nutrition side, because we know better. No. And then physical activity. So we're all active beings. Why are we all active beings? Why is that a part of our makeup, do you think? Physical activity. Why should that be a part of our makeup, our everyday life?
Why should it?
Why
is it?
Why should it be?
For health.
For health, yes. But let's talk about from a historical perspective. Our ancestors, 5, 6 generations, 10 generations. What were they doing?
Hunters or gatherers.
Hunters and gatherers, right? So if you're a hunter and a gatherer, guess what? You're being active most of the day. Most of the day. And what are we doing now today? Sitting, watching television, being couch potatoes, we're mindlessly eating, and we're watching our favorite show. I have people that don't even realize that they're consuming like an entire bag of chips while they're watching their favorite show. Until you bring it to you're nudging her.
I owned it already.
He owned it. Hey, you owned it, so that is what's most important. All right, so physical activity and then home cooking. Home cooking to a lot of people is important. Now, if it's something that's not important to you, then that's fine too. But for some people, home cooking is important. To me, home cooking is very important because I love it. And it's a form of creativity for me. And I feel like I'm nourishing my body that way. So physical activity is important to me. And then the other thing is your home environment and then your relationships. So again, not just your relationships at home, people that are in close proximity to you, but it could be family members, it could be extended family members, it could be in-laws. It could be the people that we work with.
PBNSG family.
PBNSG family, yes. So if it's your PBNSG family, you'll probably be way at the top of the wheel because you're happy with your PBNSG family, right? All right, and then we've got social life, and then joy, and then we start all over again with spirituality. So what you would normally do, like I said, is if you are happy with that particular aspect of your life, you will put your dot at the very tip top. If you're middle of the road or, feeling like you could do some work in that particular area, it will be in the middle. And if you feel like, I really don't cook, like ever, and that's something that I want to do, then you would put it closer to the center of the wheel. And then at the end of it, what you end up doing is connecting the dots. And I love that, connecting the dots, because to me, you're actually connecting the dots of your life, right? Like literally, you're connecting the dots. And then you get a chance to see visually the aspects of your life that you could or feel like you want to really improve. Now, the key to doing this exercise though, y'all, is that you cannot overthink it. Because our minds kick in, yeah? And then we're like, oh, I think my spirituality is okay. Or I'm okay health-wise. But what I want you to do is when you look at this wheel, I want you to go with your first mind. Do not overthink it. Do not talk yourself out of. And don't judge yourself either. That's the other key critical piece of this, okay? Don't judge yourself because there's no judgment here. All this is just an assessment for you to figure out what are some areas in my life for my primary food that could help improve my choices in my secondary food, okay? So that's how you do that. And I'm telling you, when I work with people that have done this, and then normally what we do is pick 3 places in our lives because we can't work on everything. It's not possible, is it? You can't work on everything. So
What if you're perfect
See, that's the thing, Jim. Not everybody is perfect, so let's see where we can find Jim here on this bill. No, nobody is perfect.
He is.
Nobody is perfect. So the thing about it is you want to pick 3 major areas of your life where you feel like you're kind of out of balance. Out of balance is a term that we are familiar with, right? We're out of balance, or we just don't feel like we are where we want to be. So you just choose 3 areas, and then what we do after we've chosen those 3 areas, you pick the top for the number 1, the number 2, and then the number 3. Then the last step of the process, and we're not going to go through all the process but the last step of the process is setting goals for the top 1, and then that's a short-term goal, and then your number 3 one, that would be like a long-term goal, something that you want to tackle later on. But we want to really focus on that top 1 that you feel like, you know what, I could really be doing better in this area, and this is what I want to focus on. This is what I want to focus on. So for me, years ago, it was health, and then spirituality has been another one that I'm working on, and then relationships. Those are my top 3. I feel like I've conquered the health thing for the most part. I'm feeling really good, energized. Been vegan now, plant-based for 8 years, I think. No surgeries, no female problems, no hormonal issues. I'm like, yes. My iron is finally through the roof. I used to have a severe iron deficiency. Yeah, and I know sometimes a lot of women can relate to that. I had a severe, and I was anemic, and they wanted me to take all these iron pills, and when I got pregnant, it got worse. And then when I went on a plant-based diet, I went to the doctor's office, just to an aside for y'all, I went to the doctor's office, and the doctor was like, oh, your iron's like through the roof. Are you eating meat again? I was like, no. I'm eating kale, collards, bok choy, spinach, all that. He was like, really? And then he sat down, he wanted to ask me more about my diet because of it, because literally my iron had been terrible since I was like 16. And now here I am, 35, and I finally don't have an iron deficiency. Yeah, y'all, I'm sure y'all can relate to something. I know Jim's got a story, and I'm sure all of you guys have a story about it. So that is what the primary versus secondary food is all about. Yes?
So by improving your secondary food, can it improve your primary food? Can you go
It can.
backwards?
You can go backwards, yes. Yes, and the reason why I say that because I also talk to people about chemical imbalances. So you can get a chemical imbalance from consuming a lot of dyes in your food. You can get a chemical imbalance from consuming a lot of processed food because it does affect your brain and sometimes the choices that you make as well. Sometimes the way you relate to people. So what about that when you want a Snicker bar and there's no Snicker bar anywhere to be found, how are you relating to your coworkers?
Crabby.
Crabby, right? You're crabby because your brain is used to all the fat and the sugar and the dairy and things like that cause us to have hormonal imbalances, chemical imbalances in the brain. So now you're relating people to people differently. And I'm telling you, it's scientifically proven time and time again that you can get a chemical, even from consuming meat that's full of antibiotics or animals that have been harmed during the slaughtering process. Before, the trauma that they experience, it can cause us to have internal trauma. Y'all know that saying, you are what you eat? It's true. It's true. So that's a very good question. What other questions do you guys have for me about primary versus secondary food? Had anybody heard of this primary versus secondary before? Oh, so I'm teaching y'all something. Except for the young lady. You went to IIN, yay! Look, IIN people normally hug, so when you come over, we gotta hug. So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Where is that? What that integrative nutrition?
Integrative nutrition is an online nutrition school. It's actually the world's largest online nutrition school. So we were taught by, I mean, some of the major gurus in health and science and nutrition and things like
That's
that.
a Loma Linda University.
I'm sorry?
Isn't it a Loma Linda University organization?
It's out of New York City. IIN is out of New York City. It's called IIN, Integrative Nutrition. Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Yeah. So that's where we were able to get our education. And I'm telling you, it works wonders for a lot of my clients, because sometimes my clients don't even realize that some of these things are out of balance. Like I had a young lady that I was working with. It was her relationships that were out of balance. She had trouble saying no to people. She had trouble saying no. And one day we were going over this wheel, and she figured out that her relationship, she put the dot closer to the inner part of the circle. I said, well, let's talk about that. What about your relationships do you feel is out of whack? What could you do differently? What do you want to do differently? What do you want to see in your relationships? She said she wanted to see more reciprocity. She wanted to be able to say no to people. She felt like she was taking care of everybody. So everybody always came to her for everything. How many of us can relate to that? Yeah. You're like the brother, uncle, sister, cousin, pastor. You're everything to everybody, right? Mm-hmm. That can cause us to be out of balance. That's why self-care is so important. So not just the food that we're consuming, but the way that we take care of ourselves is really, really critical.
I'm an art teacher, so when I started eating this way, I kept thinking about, and I even thought about writing an article called Eating the Color Wheel, and thinking about it being well balanced, but then I had a thought as you were talking that it would be interesting to know, are these colors really just arbitrary, or could they be mapped onto those things?
Yeah.
And so if you were to determine, all right, this area of my life is not so great, well, what if you started eating more green, and then your health is going to improve? Or what if you started eating more red? Is that going to help you focus and be more meditative or whatever you associate with spirituality? But that could be fun to play with.
Then you should do it.
Yeah.
You should do it. That would be great. Yes.
I was gonna, you keep using the term out of balance or balance and out of balance, and I know there's a tendency, oftentimes, for people to think about this as a more or less, but that's not what you're saying. You're saying balance, right? So being someone who's too spiritual could be out of balance, or someone who's
absolutely.
I'm thinking, well, people who have, sometimes their finances are great because they're greedy,
or they could be like a money miser, where they don't enjoy the fruits of their labor, right? Mm-hmm. So they have a ton of money in the bank, but they don't use it. They don't travel. They don't share it with other people. They don't, buy the things that they want to buy. They just keep the money because they're afraid. So there's some fear probably behind that.
So it's really balanced, not just
absolutely balanced. Absolutely balanced.
I have to hang around more meat eaters.
I'm not saying that. No, but yeah, because then that way you get other perspectives, and then you can actually rub off on people that
I gotta go there.
Yeah.
may need to come in our direction. But those are very good questions. What other questions do y'all have? So what do y'all think? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and there's tons of information on it. A lot of times people want, I need some scientific information. There's lots of science that backs up exactly what it is that we're talking about. And we all know about emotional eating. It's just sometimes subconsciously we may not realize why we're doing what we're doing.
So everybody's got their own balance, basically, right? I mean, your little dot goes around this thing, and everybody's got their own balance based on what we were hearing. So really, it's when you're chatting with a coach,
yes,
you're figuring out where you'd like to move your dot.
Right.
You're trying to make some goals to put your dot to a different spot.
Right.
And that's your spot.
That's your spot.
Your spot may not be very far away from the circle.
That's right. That's right. And the other thing is, everybody's going to be different. Everybody in here is going to be completely different, because there's enough variety here in terms of our life and how we view ourselves. But again, the key when you're looking at the circle is to not judge yourself, number one, and to follow your first mind wherever your heart tells you or your intuition says this is where I need to focus, then you need to put your dot there. Don't overthink it. Follow the first thing that you think. Because a lot of times people will look at this and I'm like, oh yeah, my education, and they want to put the dot closer to the center of the wheel, and then they talk themselves out of it. But y'all know, intuition is really your spiritual side guiding you.
Well, and psychologically, if you improve one area and then you later self-assess, like if I had more joy in my life, it's going to skew how I view other areas of my life.
Yeah, that's true.
So then I keep visualizing, I'm an artist, so I can't help, but I keep visualizing like this, digitizing this. So if you documented how you felt every single day, 365, and then just so imagine this then being a thing that would this organic thing that would just like morph and go like through.
Yeah.
That could be super cool.
Absolutely.
But I thought the moment you do that, one area is going to be impacted because your perspective,
because your
inner self is changing in response to each of these areas.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, Coach, when you've done this, you do this once a year.
Yes, I
Yeah.
do.
So, do you look at your old reels? And see what
I
your old
do.
Wheels look
You
like?
absolutely should look at your old wheels, because then that gives you another perspective on, am I really reaching the goals? And if you are not feeling like yourself, you're feeling out of balance or whatever, you can look back and say, okay, these are the things that I said I was going to work on. Did I really work on those? And then also it gives you joy.
You can't beat yourself up.
You can't beat yourself up. No. But then it also gives you joy when you look at, oh, this is where I was career-wise a year ago or 2 years ago, or my physical activity, and now look where I am. And the dot may not have moved too much, but it moved. So that's the part of not beating yourself up. So it's about having joy no matter what. Sometimes we beat ourselves up, so that's the other part of it. If we beat ourselves up because we don't always reach the goal, like exactly the way we view it, but we've made strides in a better direction or the direction that we want to go in, that's a win. I tell people that about weight loss all the time. And even people that are looking at going on a plant-based diet, they say, oh, but I fell off, I ate some eggs last week. That is okay. Because it's way different from where you were last year. Like when I first started on this journey, y'all know it's a journey, so it's not like I didn't go cold turkey. I don't know if any of y'all went cold turkey. You did?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice. Well, see, I don't have that ability. I have an aunt that she said that she went to the doctor, and the doctor said and she's in her 70s now. She went to the doctor, and the doctor said he saw a spot on her lung, and like that day she put the cigarettes down and never smoked another day in her life.
I heard
She was
a
like, I
Google
need it.
video for an hour.
Yeah.
I threw my lunch out, I went to Kroger, I bought fruit, and I started 100%. I haven't cheated once.
I loved it. So it's all about personality, right? So that's not my personality, and I recognize that.
Do I gotta work on that?
Myself up. But I would go back to the eggs. But I wouldn't beat myself up about having eggs every once in a while until I got to the point where I was having the sniffles and that congestion and rattling in my chest, and I wasn't feeling sick, and then I figured out, oh, it's those eggs causing inflammation. So I'm done with that. Right? All right, what other questions? Y'all have any other questions for me about it? Yes, sir.
I'm sure it's exactly right on what you're talking about, primary, secondary. But what do people do when they're traveling and after traveling? They're away from home. You can't always run out to the Kroger store and get the banana. I guess if you could, but sometimes
Take it with you.
Take it. So, your question is, what if you're traveling and you can't always get the food that you want to get? So again, it's a journey. So I'll give you a couple of examples, an example of myself and other people that I know. So there was a girl, I was in pharmaceuticals, so we traveled a lot. There was a girl who took it a step further than me, and she would travel with kale and her portable blender in her suitcase to meetings, like for real. Her suitcase would be filled more with like food and almond milk and kale and stuff like that so she could make smoothies in the morning, as opposed to like clothes in her suitcase. And then for me, once I got to a point where I changed my diet, like you said, I would travel with my own food too. Like I may take a banana, some fruit, a protein powder or something like that. But then, as I got a little bit more advanced in this, every place I went to, who's got the Happy Cow on their phone? You gotta have the Happy Cow app if you don't have that. Because it will be your best friend no matter what city you're in. You'll be able to find food that is comparable to your diet. Vegan friendly, and vegetarian, and stores. Yes.
The number one restaurant in fast food is plant-based friendly.
Is what?
Which is what?
Plant-based friendly.
Subway. So Subway is a great option, but you know what I used to do? Before I actually got to the meeting, because I knew I would be trapped in a meeting at some resort, for days at a time, I would actually have the cab driver or whoever was driving stop at Whole Foods or the grocery store before I got to my destination. Because then you got your food in case you need it. And then the other thing that we would do is we would carry Ziploc bags. So, if you're at a meeting and all they're going to have is probably pizza, maybe they have a salad bar with some fresh veggies and stuff like that, carry your Ziploc bag and put the veggies in your Ziploc bag so you can have them for later when all they got is like all this dairy dessert.
Well, if you're going to a hotel, I've done this, I called ahead and asked them if they have refrigerators in their room.
Yes.
And they said, well, actually we don't, but we can put one in there if you need one. I said, yes, I have a medical condition that requires me to have a refrigerator, and by golly, they did. And so
they will.
Then there was a grocery store right there, so I just stocked it full of food.
Stock it full of food, yeah. And so the 3 things that you can do, to your question, is travel with your food, carry a Ziploc bag, and make sure, because your health is your priority, that's the first thing you do. So I just got to a point where it was like almost robotic. I knew exactly what I was doing, but it takes time to get to that point.
You look at my truck and my car, I've got canned, organic, no salt vegetables.
Yeah.
Always. If I'm hungry or I forgot my lunch, there's something in that trunk every day.
Yeah.
The same thing in the back of trunk of my car. I've got a bunch of that stuff. I've got a can opener and a spoon, and you're good to go.
And you're good to
You're
go.
around, you're away from home, and you're with the Corvette Club, and they stop at a bar to eat. You don't get anything. Hey, I got
The Corvette Club.
go. I eat before I go in, and I have water. Everybody's like a
probably
pusher.
help you.
Try the salmon, that's healthy.
The battery on this is at 50
So does that
minutes.
help you?
That helps a lot.
So it's working, right?
Happy Cow app, yeah, and it's like $3.99, and it's just $3.99 a one-time deal, but it is so worth it. I've been in South Carolina. It even worked when I was in Switzerland, which I was shocked.
The thing is, you just have to get over when you pull the kale out of your suitcase, people are going to look at you.
They're gonna look at you and you don't care, because guess what? At the end of the day, they're not paying your medical bills. They're not gonna be at your bedside, if you end up being sick. So I don't care. And you get to a point where
They'll look at you more often than not, they're impressed.
right, and they start to ask questions, and then you never know who you may be helping too, to change their diet. Because if they see you doing it, no matter what age you may be, if they see you doing it, they're like, well, dang, if he or she is doing it, maybe I can do it too.
I learned something else. When you bring food to a gathering, don't label it vegan because no one will eat it.
Right.
It's not true.
Maybe you want
that 3 times now, and it's
Right.
Oh yeah, if I cook something and I make like
Changey.
traditional food for everybody else, my guests that are coming over, and I have all like my vegan dishes, they'll eat up all my vegan food. And I'm like, really, y'all? I made all this food for y'all. You got chicken and salmon, and y'all want to eat my kale and quinoa?
It's always good to prepare beforehand, so as the saying, you always plan to fail or fail to plan.
That's right.
And I think, because we travel a lot, so a lot of time we just search for Airbnb and we choose the one that close to like a health food store.
Absolutely.
So we can stock up and then cook.
Yes, and it becomes part of your life. It becomes part of what you do. It's no longer like a chore. Now, at first, it may seem, because it's foreign, and again, our brains are wired where we're used to repetition and doing the same things. But after a while, like for me, it's like second nature. I guarantee you, I can find something to eat no matter where I'm at.
I think if you're doing hotels and resorts too, if you tell the cook, that you're no salt, no oil,
right,
poultry
It's getting
diet.
more accommodating.
Yeah, they'll definitely do something. I mean, you may be eating a lot of salad, but they'll do something for you.
They'll do something, yeah.
The other
But
thing
a lot of
is,
their salads already have oil all over them. You gotta ask that.
yeah, you gotta tell them.
Yeah.
But like if you need oil-free dressings, people need to speak up and ask because it's more common. And
Right.
if we don't make a point of it,
Well, you
it's
see,
not
they
gonna
can
become
make the
mainstream.
same money on produce than they can on expensive protein, so
Absolutely.
they're happy to
Right.
support you.
They
They
want
want you to
happy
be
to support you. Yeah, and I've
Right.
seen
Every
more
chef
and more.
wants to be happy.
Yeah, I've seen more and more restaurants, even restaurants that traditionally like Adiamos, for example. You know, and here's another tip for you guys, and you probably already know this because I'm speaking about Adiamos. If you go to a restaurant and it's a traditional, you know, meat eater kind of place, I don't even look at the menu. I just tell them, can you make me some mixed vegetables, whatever you have in season, and or potatoes or something like that, and put some seasoning on it, make it taste good, and I'm good. No oil, whatever the case may be.
Well, did you know that Paul went to Andiamo's and they have 4 plant-based
Now they do.
menus, on the menu every day.
And here's another.
No oil, anything.
Yeah, here's another easy one. There's a Chipotle in every town.
Yes.
In
And
every
you
town,
can
right?
get brown rice bowl, right, with lettuce, with fresh pico, with cumin black beans,
Yep.
and now they've got sofrito tofu that is
It's so good, right?
really
Oh.
good.
It's like the
So-
right amount of spice on it.
You know, and if you can do avocado, they throw a big old scoop of avocado on the veggie ones. They like doing that too.
Mhm.
You know,
'Cause
and
it's
they don't
extra.
charge you extra for it if it's a veggie one.
Oh, they don't?
No, they don't. And that's
So-
another, yeah, so you learn the places, right? And you're so right. If there's nothing else, there's gonna be a Chipotle or a Qdoba where I can go. Or just a traditional Mexican restaurant and I say, okay, do you cook your beans and meat? If they don't cook them in meat, I just have beans and some lettuce or something like that. And I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
With
you have
some
to
salsa.
be careful on those because a lot of them do use chicken broth.
And
Yeah,
pork
pork
still,
Well,
yeah.
and you can't fool yourself, Chipotle's probably put a little oil in with the fries, you know, you're gonna get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do on the white. I don't think they do on the brown.
Yeah, but you can ask, and you know, again, I love your idea about Airbnbs. That's what we do now as a family more times than not because number one, it's less expensive, and then I want to be able to cook my own food.
Right.
So you take your food, stock up the refrigerator, and then you are actually saving money on your vacation. So you spend less money on food, and you have more family time because you're preparing meals together. Like we have Taco Tuesday. My son can attest to that. We were, I don't know where we were, Panama City Beach, I think. And remember, we had Taco Tuesday, and because my son likes to make tacos, he made tacos for everybody. And I just had like the sides and the beans and stuff like that. But, you know, that's a great family time. It's probably like 15 of us, and we had Taco Tuesday in our Airbnb.
The other thing about
He is not.
traveling,
Yeah, so I don't force what it is that, because, you know, we're all sovereign beings, right? So I just lead by example. And then whatever he decides is what he
He's
decides.
with you a lot too, serving you juices and stuff.
He
I've
is
seen
with
him
me a
behind-
lot.
I always see him.
Yeah.
And he's good behind the counter
He
too.
is. He's awesome like that. See that great smile? Yeah. So yeah, that's, you know, primary, secondary food, and you know, it's a, like I said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And don't feel bad if you fall off, or like I said, you're not quite where you want to be, because you know, this is a journey, and you just have to look back and say, you know what, I'm not where I was 10 years ago. Thank God for that. Right?
Well, Callie, thank you so much for
Thank y'all for having me. And I hope to come back to your meeting and partake in some of this good food. I'm telling you, dang, when we walked in, the aroma just like hit me.
This
I'm like,
is a good night.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
how many
Do
do
a
you
bite
get
or two
one?
if you could.
we get like 5 or 6 because we're fairly new, you know, so, you know, we're growing, but we get about 5 or 6 people like that.
How do you do potlucks? Because that's the big drive.
We do. And the first few times I actually made the food, but now we're starting the potlucks.
As a group leader,
potlucks
I have
are
to
fun.
tell you the secret to our success.
What's the secret? Please tell me.
My co-leader, Lindsay, who is
Oh my God.
Oh, yes.
She's
So
great.
Lindsay is great. Lindsay communicates like crazy. She's
Oh,
awesome.
so
And
good.
this was actually her idea, so we got to thank Lindsay for,
Yeah.
you know, she's like, I want to learn about their primary food. This
Yeah,
is
so
just
she
in our
said we have to
conversation.
teach her next month,
Yeah.
but she couldn't come.
So let me just do a couple of quick announcements, you guys, before everyone departs from the table. Just a couple of upcoming events. If anyone wants to learn how to cook with the Instant Pot, they're in the class 28. Dr.